Hi everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for joining us on this webinar today. We hope that you find it beneficial and that you can take some practical information from it. To start things off, I'm going to introduce our panel, and they will be talking to you today around everything GDPR and Sentinel. First off, my name is Donald O'Neill. I'm the Marketing Manager for Clonwilliam Health, and I'll be emceeing the webinar today. With me, I have Glenda O'Neill, who a lot of you will know as our Customer Relations and Training Executive. We also have Michael Burns, who's Head of Practice Services. And finally, we've Colin O'Connor, who is the Operations Director for Clonwilliam Group and acting DPO at the moment. So we're kind of conscious of everybody's time, and we know it's a very busy period for everybody. So we're going to try and keep this as quick as we can. Rough outline of the agenda. This is your introduction. I'm going to hand it over to Glenda shortly, who's going to run through the data protection in HPM. Then Michael is going to give us an overview of the encryption as part of GDPR Sentinel. Colin is going to talk to you about what we have done internally in terms of GDPR activities and preparations. And then we will finish with some questions and answers. So if you have any questions, please do submit them using the question box on the GoToWebinar viewer, and we'll do our best to get through as many. Depending on how we're going for time, we might ask a couple of questions after each section, but then we will do a Q&A at the end. So without further ado, I am going to pass this off to Glenda, and I'm just going to share your screen now, Glenda, and then you can take it away.
Okay, I'm just loading up my screen here now.
We have that now. Thanks, Glenda.
Yeah, everybody can see that. Okay, so Hi everyone. So I'm just going to run through a few improvements we've made to HPM to facilitate you if a patient requests a copy of their medical records. And this will be an ongoing kind of updates that we'll do on a kind of an ongoing basis as this develops. So we'll start off and we'll click on the patient tab. You're all very familiar with this part. And we click on our search. And we're going to search for a patient. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to search for blogs. And again, you do your search the way you always do, surname, comma, first name, or first name, space, surname. And we have Joe Blogs on the list. So I'm going to click on Joe Blogs. So you're all very familiar with this part here. The top half of the chart, we have his patient details. And then the bottom half, we have our 6 windows with his medical information. So some new features we've added in. I'm going to go up here to the health summary icon up here. And if I click on that health summary, you'll see we have a couple of options in here. So you have the first option here is print patient details. So I'll click that option. And up here, we have a date filter in here. So you can click in and you can put in dates if you want to see his medical history between a certain date range. You can add your dates in here, or you can just leave it blank, and that will show everything in the chart. So I'm going to just click OK here. And we get a document that opens up with his full medical history printed. It just takes a couple of steps open there. So you can see there that's a template within your templates. And you can actually edit that template if you want. You can go into into administration and templates, and you can kind of pretty much say what you want to see on that. But we've kind of created a basic template for you. So it will give you the information that you will need. So we have like the top half of it here is the surgery details. So it will have your information in here. Then you have patient details, you have his address, his date of birth, so all his basic kind of medical or basic patient details in here. You have any identifiers, so his GMS, if he has a health insurance number, you'll see them here. Appointments. I'm just going to minimize this here so I can get to my scroll bar. We'll just scroll down the appointment details. So any appointments that he has ever made will show on the list here. His accounts, so invoice, receipts, any outstanding amounts. And we'll scroll down further. A test patient, so I don't have a lot of data in here. I mean, I'm sure yours will be a lot longer than this. So we have his clinical details, any allergies, medication he's on, his medical history. There's a button there to print this off for the patient, a breakdown, or gives you a breakdown of all his history. To print that information off, you just click on the red plus up, and you just click on the print button here. So you have your option to print or quick print or print preview there. So if I was to click print, it will ask me where I'm sending the information to, and I have my printer in here, and I just say OK, and that will send it to print. So I'm going to close this document here now. Is the view patient history. So when I click on this option, icons on the side here on the left hand side, so I have a text view and I have a list view. So if I click on the text view, is similar to what we've just looked at in the other drop down list, only in here you can actually choose what you want to add or what information you want to provide to the customer. So obviously they're ticked on by default in here, but you can untick them and you can choose what information you'd like to actually include. So if I untick consultations, obviously that will take it out of the list down here for me. I also have over here a date filter again. So again, you can put in a date range in here. So if I click on the little drop down icon, I get my calendar and I can pick my dates that I want to see it from. So if I pick the first there until today, it will just show me the information that I've added between that date range. If I leave them blank, it will show me everything in the history. And I'm going to go across up here. So that's the text view icon we have added there. The next one across here is a list view. A list view again is very similar to what we just looked at, only it gives a full breakdown of all the different windows in the chart in here. So you can see there, if I click on medication, I have all his previous history in here, the medication history. And down here I have my options in here to add, and I can edit from in here just the same as I can in the chart. The second one across, I have all his consultation notes, medical history, immunizations, exams, protocols, documents, and this is where I was saying earlier on, you don't want the documents printing on the summary, so in here you have the option to print all his documents off, and they'll be listed in date order in here. So if you wanted to print, you can print them all on individually. You can highlight the document and you can click print, or you can click on the document and hold the shift key down, and the shift key is the little the icon, the little button kind of underneath your capital locks. It's like a little arrow upwards. If you hold that button down and you click and you highlight the documents that you want to include, you just highlight them there and you can just click the print there. You can click the top one and hold the shift key down and click on the last one, and that will select them all for you in one go, and then you can click on print there. E-referrals then, this is really handy here too. You have any e-referrals that you've sent, and if you click on the actual e-referral, you'll be able to see the history of the information that option there. And you can also, obviously you'll have a list of them in here. You can select them the same way we did with the documents. You can highlight it, hold the shift key down, select them till they all go that yellow color, and then you'll just click the print button there, and that prints them all off. You also have your HL7 messages in there as well, so you can print them. So you can see over here, some people might be wondering why I'm in e-referrals and I have 2 on the list here, but I have a couple of dates in there. Every time you make a change to the chart, we date stamp it over here. So it doesn't matter if it was an e-referral or if it was a medical history added or a document, it's going to put a date in over here. So that's why we're seeing more dates than referrals we have over here. So these are just, this is kind of separate to this window over here. This is just to list everything that was ever done in the chart on these dates. And that's pretty much it for the moment. As I say, it's kind of an ongoing thing. We'll be looking at it going forward to see if there's anything else we can add. We'll be taking feedback. So,
that's great, Glenda. We've had a couple of questions just come in there. First of all, is there any way to email this information without having to print it off and scan it in?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, if you want to, you could include an attachment to your health mail. So if I click on the health summary here and I go into my print patient details, I'll leave this blank again, so I'm not going to put in any day filter in here, and I say OK. And the document to print. So once the document loads here, it just takes a couple of seconds, and I go up to my red plus up here and I send it to print. So I'm sending it to print as if I'm going to print it on paper. When I click on the print option here, it gives me the option to pick a printer here, and in this case here, obviously I have a fake printer in because of a test system, but on your system, if you look, you'll have a PDF printer in on your list in here. So when you select the Microsoft Print to PDF, what it will do is when you say OK, it will open, you could call it whatever the patient's name is, medical, and you'll just say save it there, and that will save it onto your email as you would, and you'll attach the email in there. So that's the way you will email the information.
That's great, Glenda. And then just a follow-up to that one, what about information that I've made inactive? Will this also print?
Oh yes, so we click on HAN and we click on our print patient details. You can see in here we have a tick box in here that says include only active items. Now if I was to untick that box, then that will give me all my inactive in here. And the same in the health summary. If I click on the health summary drop down and I have my view patient history. Again, over here that says show inactive. So if I tick that on there, it's going to show me anything that I've made inactive, and that will include them when I print.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, look, we'll crack on, and we'll pass it over to Michael. Glenda, if you want to hand it over to Michael there, and he'll talk to us about encryption. Sorry,
Okay,
Michael. I think you might be on mute, Michael.
Yes, good morning.
There we go.
All right, guys. So as part of the GDPR Sentinel, we're offering customers the ability to provide an encryption service that they can use to, encrypt a PC or a laptop or a server of their choice. The application we're using is called DesLock. It's a Windows data encryption utility capable of encrypting entire disks using a technology called full disk encryption. Basically, once it is deployed on a device, before the device boots up, the user is presented with a username and password that they will need to enter before it then continues to boot into Windows. The main reason for deploying, an encryption service like this will be to mitigate against, the loss or theft of a server or laptop with sensitive data on it. In terms of the implementation of it, we have done a large number of testing internally on it and how best to deploy this. So after a number of discussions internally, we've decided to deploy it slightly different how it's normally deployed. Normally it's pushed out to the full C drive, but we have come up against a number of issues with deployments like that in terms of other third-party applications that maybe sit on the actual drive itself. So we've decided to actually partition the drive within Windows. And if you don't have a partition drive in your server, we will have to create one and move that patient-sensitive data onto that partition drive, and then use DesLock encryption to encrypt that particular drive. DesLock is managed centrally, so it allows us to deploy and update the actual service essentially remotely without any intervention from the end user themselves. It will be handled by our implementation team. There is a significant overhead involved in the encryption process. The encryption itself, from our tests and our speaking with ESET and their benchmarks, can take anywhere from 2 hours to 2 days, depending on, obviously that's the maximum and minimum that they've kind of said to us, and it'll depend significantly on the spec of the PC or server that we're encrypting and the size of the actual drive on it. So for example, something, some users may have 1-2 terabyte drives. That's obviously going to take up to 2 days maybe. And with that in mind, it will take us, quite a lot of time to actually roll this out to all sites. And some, as a result of the, the time it can take, may have to be done over a weekend, but we'll schedule that with the individual sites. As part of the package, there's one single encryption license available, which you can use to, encrypt the server or a laptop. It depends. It'll be up to the site, I guess, to decide what way they want to use that. They may have some other encryption in place on their server. They may have racket-mounted server that is secure with a lock that's bolted down, and they may decide that that's their mitigating against that risk is sufficient, and they may want to use it for a laptop. And if they want to, have 2 or 3 other laptops, we can provide additional licenses if, they want to get those encrypted as well. So to avail of it, our team have already begun the deployment of the encryption service. We will be contacting all customers directly to organize the deployment of the service on a site-by-site basis. There will be some, hardware out there that will not meet the requirements for the encryption service. We are conducting, a pre-deployment check and to be able to determine this before we do the actual installation. There are also a number of prerequisites we need to do. For example, Windows updates need to be fully patched before we deploy it. If you have hardware with us, we will, do that for you and schedule that with you. And once we are happy, that all these checks have passed, we'll install the software, which we can do remotely. And the overhead is really involved in the actual, there's a lot of pre-deployment checks that we need to do, and the actual before the encryption takes place itself. As I said, it can be the encryption itself, the installation can be done remotely. The encryption itself, once the software is installed, we can schedule a time to roll out the actual encryption. So for example, we could install, let's say, the application on a normal Tuesday morning without much interference with the customer, and then wait until maybe that weekend before we actually encrypt it, because the potential time it will take to actually encrypt that device. But we'll have a good estimate of that because, as I said, we'll do this on a site-by-site basis, and we have all these checks in place that somebody will contact you with and go through your own specification on a site-by-site basis. A few things that we've just need to, it is part of our pre-deployment checks, but it would make installation of it a lot easier if these are already in place. So we will need the server to have, if it is the server you decide to encrypt, to have a monitor or keyboard on the actual server itself. I know a lot of servers out there would not have a monitor or keyboard installed, and access to that would be done maybe remotely from another PC within the practice. However, once the data or once the server is encrypted, that facility is no longer available. If the drive is once the PC or server is booting up, so you will need to be physically at the device to unlock that, put in that username and password before it'll allow you to boot into Windows. So that's something, if customers had in place, it would help us to roll this out a little bit quicker. I guess the most important thing about it when it is installed is the username and password that comes with it. It's extremely important. I can't emphasize it enough that the username and password that you have, that is kept in a secure but accessible location, and suggest that maybe you select a member or two within your practice. I'm not sure what your normal processes are for sensitive information like this, but it would be extremely important that you make sure that that is, one, secure, and two, accessible, because it will be needed anytime that server or laptop is rebooted and turned on. You will need access to that to be able to go any further. And the other important thing is just the actual encryption time, as I mentioned itself. It can take up to 2 days. We have seen it take 2 hours, but we just need to emphasize that it will take us a little while to roll this out due to the nature of the encryption itself. And the time taken, as I said, it could take us, we may need to run this out on weekends, depending on the practice itself, the size of the actual drive we're encrypting. We will know that with our pre-deployment checks, and we will discuss this individually on a site-by-site basis. So we'll know in advance whether you will need like a weekend to roll this out, or we could do it maybe overnight. That's it really, unless there's
That's
Any
great,
other
Michael. We've had a
questions?
couple of questions in. I'm just going to ask them in order. So, what do we do if we decide that we don't want to get the server encrypted?
Yeah, if it is a case that you may have some other, as some already I think have, some other package in place in terms of the encryption on the server. And if that is the case, you could use that particular license maybe to encrypt a laptop or another device. And particularly laptops is, I guess, they're potentially if the doctor is moving from site to site with them, and there is some sensitive data on them, we could use that license for that particular device.
And then just to follow up, is there any downtime involved for the practice to implement this?
Yeah, there will be some downtime as there are a number of reboots that will need to take place. If the Windows updates aren't patched and up to date, we'll need to schedule a time to do that. Again, we'll try to do it as much as possible out of hours. The deployment, the installation of the software will require a reboot, and the encryption itself, while it can be done during business hours, we would probably best in terms of large practices that it's done on a weekend, just to minimize the potential for any degradation of performance or impact to their service. So we will try and, obviously mindful of how busy practices are, and try and do it where possible out of hours to minimize any downtime.
Great, thanks. And if you want to pass it on to Colin now, who's going to talk about
Sure.
what we have done internally in terms of our GDPR preparations.
Okay. So just going to go through some of the preparations that we've done at Clanwilliam Group. Initially, we started a couple of years ago with a gap analysis as to where we were within our own current procedures and policies at the time. We brought in GDPR specialists to look at all aspects of our business, our customer support, our IT, our development, the way we host data, our deployment techniques, and so on, HR and finance. So out of that, we started to work on an action plan to plug the gaps, update our policies. One of the first things we did was the staff awareness programs. So we implemented a GDPR management system, which allows us to enable all of our staff to access GDPR training sessions related to the GDPR itself, and then specific aspects of those, such as data subject access requests, consent, encryption, things like data breach notifications, how to identify a data breach, and how to keep data secure, clean desk policies, that type of thing. So they're regularly distributed to the staff, and we can trace when they've done them and completed them. There's a history of all access, and it's done through our enrollment program too when employees start. So from there, then we looked at how Clanwilliam Health work as a data processor and what risks we have in terms of our touch points, and that comes down to the way we store our information on our customers, call recording, how information flows between, for example, say programmers with data migrations, data hosting, our cyber liability insurance, our data destruction, so for destroying hard drives, that kind of thing. For our customers, how we deploy it, and as well as Michael just discussed there earlier, encryption, looking at the best practices for what our customers need there. The DESLock tool, which Michael described, we've also rolled that out in our company. So all of our laptops, our trainer laptops, our engineers, their hard drives, they're all encrypted with DESLock, and that provides us functionality to see devices through a central console, and even remote wipe them if we needed to, if they were ever stolen or lost. To comply with our regulations as well, we are hiring a full-time DPO. I've been acting as DPO for the last year, but it requires a full-time position. And our DPO starts with us on June the 8th, who will be able to continue our compliance requirements for the group, Clanwilliam Health, and ensure that audits are done internally, that any questions from our customers that may require some expertise are dealt with. Data subject access requests are adhered to and followed, and also would interface with the Data Protection Commissioner if we have any queries ourselves. So we also looked at our marketing techniques as well, our websites. We updated our websites for cookie policies, how we take consent from our customers, and how we use your information in terms of publishing newsletters like this, and even notifications of webinars and so on, and giving customers the options to opt out. And as part of our service, we obviously employed sub-processors, and they may include things like using LogMeIn to access your machines, our CRM to store information when calls are logged. So we ensured all these suppliers also adhere to the GDPR requirements. We put in data processing agreements with those, so that we're happy that anybody we engage with is working within the GDPR compliance rules, and that they're not pushing any information outside of the EU. Everything's stored inside the EU. So that's what we've been doing at Clonmillion Health to facilitate our needs.
That's great, Colin. Thanks. I think we'll just move on and wrap up with some questions that we've gotten in from the audience today. The first one is for Glenda. And Glenda, the question is, in the PDFs that you were creating earlier, are the pages numbered in those PDFs?
Let me just have a look there.
No worries.
Not at the moment, they're not. But when you go into your administration and your templates, there is a way to add in a page number on the bottom. Do you want me to run through how to do that quickly?
If you could, that'd be beneficial, I think. Yeah. Colin, do you want to flick it over to Glenda's screen there, just so we can see it?
Yeah, doing that now.
Thanks.
When I go into administration, when I go into my templates here, and when I get my template, and I'm just going to pick any template in here just to show you how to add. So I'll just pick this one in here. It's just opening up here now. It just takes a couple of seconds. Sorry, this is a test system, so sometimes we run into a few issues that you as a customer won't hopefully have. And you can see there I'm in the actual, now I'm not in the template I was in earlier on, I'd have to find that one, but they're all the same, they all kind of operate in the same way. And if you go in here, see the way this one actually has a page in here. So to add a page, you just go into insert to your footer there, and you could add a footer in, and then you could put in, let me see where it is. If we added the footer in, and I'm not sure where the page, I'd have to, I might have to think of, I might have to come back to you on this one. I might have to send something out.
That's no problem.
I'm not sure there is a way.
That's no problem. Look, as long as we know that we can do it, and we can follow up and actually answer the question.
Yeah.
In terms of other questions that we've gotten in, there's been a few around, is ESET DSOC included in the current package price? So ESET DSOC actually falls under our GDPR Sentinel package, which is a mandatory upgrade for everybody. The cost for that is €36.75 per month, and that includes ESET encryption for one server or laptop. If you want to add on an additional server or laptop, that's absolutely fine, but it will cost an additional €9.90 per month. So hopefully that addresses all of the questions that we've had today, and I'd just like to thank you all again for attending, and we're going to wrap it up now because we're pretty much on time. So thanks everyone. This webinar will be recorded and made available to anybody who wants to rewatch it. If you have any further questions or any follow-up questions that you would like addressed, please do send them to gdpr@clonwilliamgroup.com. That's gdpr@clonwilliamgroup.com, and we'll do our best to get back to you and get you the answers you need. Thanks very much. Cheers. Bye bye.